Welcome, and thank you for joining us today. I'm Clein, LCSW, and Director of Holocaust Survivor Services at Jewish Federation of Family Services. The presentation today is going to be for older adults and caregivers during this COVID-19 pandemic. For many of us, this is uncharted territory. We're all in the same storm, but each of us is in a different boat. For many people who are a little bit older, they have weathered many storms before, and we've learned to deal with changes through life experience. Next slide. So the goals today is we want to be able to know what has changed in our world and how are we coping and what are we anticipating to happen. To understand that the change affects everyone and to be aware of our abilities and use them and the strengths of others. We're also going to focus on doing one thing at a time. Often when we don't have control over the environment and things around us, if we're focusing on what we need to do, it's easier for us to get through each moment and each day. It's also important for us to have an attitude of gratitude and then to be kind to yourself and to others. Next slide. So what has changed for you? As an older adult, there are many things that you may be dealing with, and that's the difference between younger people and older people is for many younger people, they're coping with one or two issues that are of concern to them, and as we get older, we have multiple things that might be affecting us. So there's physical health, we have chronic and acute conditions that we have to manage. There's sensory changes, whether it be with your vision, with your hearing, and sometimes even with memory and your cognition, understanding things. We may have fewer emotional supports. Many times an older adult is living alone and may not have family with them, or there may be their family are far away. There is a financial impact, and this might be a little less of a worry for older adults if they're already getting their Social Security or a pension, but they may be worried about their loved ones, their children or their grandchildren who may have lost jobs. So the financial impact is there, and then there are the costs of increased cost of living in a time like this when you're having to have extra delivery costs or rely on other people to purchase things for you, and they may not go to the same stores that you do. Finding meaningful activities. You know, if you were a bridge player and you were able to go out daily and play bridge, you might find yourself at a loss because you're not able to go out and see people and do the things that you love to do. So how do you find meaningful activities at home when you used to have them outside of the house? Communication and daily habits may have changed, particularly for older adults. It's more difficult as we now have to rely so much on technology to help us connect with people. It's really important to try and maintain those daily habits, but it's difficult when you have been used to getting up and going out or doing things, focusing on what you need to do and not being able to do that. So it's easy to stay in bed all day or not to get dressed, or, you know, when nobody's coming by, you have no reason to make yourself do the day-to-day things that you need to. Accessibility to services has definitely changed. You're not able to get around as much. You're limited, and if you do go out, there may be, you're going to fewer places and doing a little less. So it may be feeling a little bit limited, and you may not be able to find the availability of all the products that you need or that you're concerned about getting. So how do you get that when all of those things are a challenge for you? Next slide. When you're a caregiver, moving on from an older person taking care of themselves, when you're a person who's taking care of an older adult, you have other challenges. There have been issues if you're providing cares in your home or out of your home. If someone is in a facility, you may not be able to visit, and that may be really difficult for the person you're caring for as well as for yourself if you're not able to reach out, touch each other, see each other, and only, deal with things by phone. It can cause a lot of anxiety for people to feel that they're separated. The stay-at-home and the social distancing, you might be worried about how do I provide care if I'm not supposed to touch a person too much. I'm concerned that if I'm doing things that I might transfer virus or other health issues to the person I'm caring for. So the stay-at-home and social distancing can cause problems, or if you have to have an outside caretaker come into the home, how do you ensure that you have safety? So there are a lot of worries that people may have, but it's important to use common sense, use the guidelines that are given to wash hands, to wear a face mask, to wear gloves, and it's really important to maintain that the risk factors, finding out how many different generations might be in the home. You've seen issues where grandchildren have come to visit, but they're outside and they're just waving through the window. So we find different ways of connecting. If you're caregiving for an older adult, you may not necessarily be going in to give physical care, or if you are giving physical care, you're having to do it differently. Balancing your responsibilities. If you're caregiving not only for older parents, you may be caregiving for a spouse or for children, all at the same time, and you've got to be careful that you're taking care of yourself as well, and that you have boundaries and you don't allow too many distractions to impact if you're having to work from home, and that you're still able to do the different responsibilities that are on your shoulders. Self-care and how to identify burnout is important, because we have to be able to see when are we getting frustrated or having difficulty doing the day-to-day activities that we need to do as a caregiver. And if you're finding that you're just exhausted and you don't want to do the things and you're trying to procrastinate or avoid things, it's a key idea that you might be experiencing some caregiver burnout. Next slide. So it's also vitally important to know that as older adults have lived many years, they've built up a lot of resilience. The resilience is that they've learned to cope with difficult times, and it's something that we look at how have we done things in stressful times in the past. How did we get through difficulties and come out stronger on the other end? We have to assess our emotional strength and be aware of your own needs and the needs of others. Knowing your internal strengths, if you've got the energy to do things, asking yourself, is this important to me today? Is it going to be important to me in 5 days' time? How am I reacting to things? Am I allowing myself to have time to understand what's going on around me and asking the right people for the right things that I need? It's important to know that we're not as independent as we thought we were. There are several instances where we think of ourselves as being totally able to take care of ourselves and be independent, but we are really interdependent. We can't provide all our needs on our own. Just the technology and having electricity, what would we do if we didn't have that? So it's important to identify who you can go to, where you can get the services that you need. Being mindful, being aware of your own feelings and emotions and how you are adapting to these changes. If you're having increased anxiety, how are you getting a release from that? Do you have a pet? Are you calling family? Are they visiting? Do you live with somebody? Do you live alone? And if you don't have any of those things and you're feeling very isolated, even just plants, taking care of plants, seeing things grow, going out for a walk, obviously, if you can, to put on your personal protective equipment if you have to go out, but being able to be mindful of your own needs and how do you maintain that equilibrium and the safety that you need. Know who your trusted relationships are. Who are you going to for the different things that you do need? Are you having to rely on a volunteer that you may have never met before, or a neighbor who's offered to go and get some things from the store for you? It really is, how do we adapt and be flexible to do things differently? Be gentle on yourself and others. It really is hard to hold the standards that we used to have. And it's okay that we change and that we allow ourselves to be in the moment and to learn how to do things differently. It's an opportunity for us to realize that good can come out of difficult situations. And so please be gentle on yourself and others, because no one has dealt with this before. Next slide. So we have a lot of valuable freedoms that we often take for granted. Security and our safety. It may be that you're feeling that things are very unsafe at the moment. And these are things that are all related to experiencing trauma. So safety, having somebody who's trustworthy, somebody that you can rely on, knowing that you have choices, and that you can cooperate with others, and that you have some power over, even if it's a small choice, those small things in your life will allow you to have less of a trauma response to this current situation. Next slide. Maintaining a positive outlook is very challenging for some people. For others, it's done easily enough. But as we move through this time and things start opening up in the community, it's important to know that because this is what everybody else is doing, if you're not comfortable doing it, you don't have to. You have to know your own feelings, thoughts, and behaviors, because those are your clues as to how you're coping with these unusual circumstances. When you're talking to family, friends, neighbors, it can really be helpful that you use positive words, positive language. Too often we talk ourselves down and we create a negative viewpoint for ourselves, and it's hard to get out of that. So just challenge yourself to use positive words. Caring for other things, as I said before, whether it's family, friends, neighbors, pets, or even just things that you're growing. A lot of people are looking to see if they can grow things because they're afraid of going out. Reinforce the good things in your life. Build and maintain a mutual aid or supportive community. Know where you are valued and who you value, and put time into those relationships. It's a perfect opportunity for us to explore some difficult conversations that you might not have been able to have in the past. When you're feeling anxious and you're asking others, you know, I'm feeling this, what about you? You might be able to really understand what they're going through, or tell them what you're experiencing, and it gives them a window into your world so that they can support you in the way that you need to be supported. it's important to have these conversations all the time. These are not single, one-time conversations that you should be having. Saying, you know, I'm really afraid that what happens if I should need to go to the hospital? What do I want? If I have to be alone and you can't come and visit, how would I want you to feel? It's an opportunity for us to talk to one another and share the thoughts and the wishes that we have in terms of how we treat each other. You might want to take the time to ask someone who's an older adult, or if you're an older adult, to share with somebody younger. You know, I remember when this happened and this is how we did it. You might be teaching the younger generation how to cope with these challenging times. Or maybe if you're the person taking care of an older adult, you might want to ask them, when you were younger, how did you manage, or how did your parents manage, or what did you learn? So there's a way for us to have those conversations and share with one another, get to know more deeply what a person wants, what their needs are, how you can best help them. It's important to ask someone and to give them the dignity of how you're going to help. So if I need to do this for you, what is the best way for me to be able to do it for you, giving you the control? If I have to help you to the bathroom, what is the best way? Or if, you know, I need to cook food for you, do you need me to cut it up for you? Can you do that on your own? Don't assume that you know what the other person needs. It really is important to check in with them and ask them. And if someone is feeling anxious and depressed, it's not unusual for them to be feeling that they've got a loss of concentration, or they've got no appetite, or they're sleeping too much or not sleeping enough. And it really is important to speak to your physician if you're having those kinds of feelings or emotions or symptoms, so that you're taking care of yourself. Next slide. We're all different. We have different personalities, and we want to be able to, some of us need to have all our ducks in a row, and finally we get them there, and then it doesn't stay for long. They scatter or they go off in their own direction. So know who you are. Some of us are much more free and looking to express ourselves and be able to have some fun. So even if you're at home alone and you're looking to, you know, create something positive, you know, put on your best dress. You know, as they say, some people are dressing up to take garbage out, but wear clothes that aren't boring to you. Make it fun for yourself. And if you need to, you know, share that with others. If you can take a picture, take a selfie, or someone can take a picture of you and share it for you. For many older adults, if you don't have the technology, you can ask someone to give you a hand with that, and it can help share your experience of what's going on right now. So before I go to the last slide, I just want to try and get to a couple of the questions that came in. There were several that, you know, did come in, and I don't know that we have time to answer all of them, but here's a couple of them. One person wrote in, how do you explain to your parents the importance of not going out? My mother feels like I'm treating her as a child. So for many older adults, there are different risk factors. They may have a different view of life, having lived most of their life. They may not be as concerned about getting sick, or if that should cause death to happen sooner, because they may not be looking at a future the same way as a younger person. So they may be able to feel that they can take greater risks And we all know that as we are caring for family members, we want to protect them. We want the best for them. So there are times when children will, give their parents instruction on what to do and how to do things. And again, giving them the choice, do you want to do this or do you want to do that? Do you want to wear the gloves and the mask and be able to go out, or do you want to stay home? Asking what is best for them will give them the knowledge that you are honoring their age and their wisdom and their choices, so that they can have a say in what's going on. So there's no one instruction that fits everybody. For each of us, we have our own experience, our own background, our own risks that we're willing to take, and it's important to allow the choice, even if it's a bad choice in your opinion. That's in your opinion. That's from your perspective. It may not be from the other person's perspective. So take a moment to check in and say, I understand you want to do this, and here's my thoughts. What's your rationale for doing what you're doing, so that you give yourself an opportunity to understand why the other person is choosing to do what they're doing. So, and again, sometimes the importance of going out and seeing people is far more valuable to that individual than staying home and staying safe. So that leads a little bit into the next question, where I have someone who wrote in that they're in their 70s and mother is in her 90s. And this is something that we're seeing a lot of, is we're having older adults taking care of their very old parents, so that there are risk factors to the caregivers, the children of the older adults. And the question is, how do we trade off against being able to provide companionship, look at old pictures, have family meals together, even if there isn't a risk of infection? It seems worse to spend your last years without this and without close contact with grandchildren. How do we balance these for the elderly, and especially the very old? So that's a very valuable question, and important for us to find the balance for each person. As I said, for some people, they feel more secure being isolated, and others feel more insecure being so isolated. So it really is something that you have to balance for yourself and for the other person and for your family as a whole. It's not just one person operating alone. We certainly operate within systems, and it's important for us to, again, to know who are the trusted people that you are going to socialize with, or that you will have contact with, even during a time of crisis. Who do you trust? Who has the same cleanliness, or who's taking the same precautions? You might not want to go to someone who's got, who's working in a school or working in a hospital. But, if it's your neighbor and they're next door, and you know that they're only going out occasionally to the store, you might want to be able to chat to them, from your, across your fence. It's not unusual for people to need to have that social interaction. So again, it's a personal choice, but you have to use your common sense and value your the risk factors that may be involved and what it means to you. If it's important for you and you're the kind of person who needs the input of others, then go ahead and use the social distancing, use the measures that they have suggested that we take care of if we do have to interact with others. No one is saying that you have to be completely wrapped in a bubble and isolated, but if you're going to interact with others, make sure that you're taking the precautions. You don't have to greet people with a hug and a kiss. Yes, the touch is really good. If you need to do that, maybe you do that with, with a towel or a blanket or a sheet so that you can have that connection if you're afraid of passing on germs or, infection. But the most important thing, wash your hands. When you go to somebody's home, when you go in or before you go in, if you can, wash your hands. And if you touch anything, wash your hands and have them wash their hands. There are little things that you can do to make yourself protected and to give the opportunity for interaction with others. Okay, so those were a couple of the questions that came in. I'm sorry I don't have time to get to more of them, but if we can have the last slide. And I want to wish everybody Shabbat Shalom and have a great long Memorial Day weekend. Be safe, take care of yourself, and be well.